Hello and welcome. My name is Alan and we are back with more Southern Horrors and Other Writings by Miss Ida B. Wells. Today we are finishing up this chapter. It'll be a few pages, 66 through 72, and then we get into the red record. But with that, let's hop into this. Chapter 5, The South's Position. Henry W. Grady is well remembered in his well-remembered speeches in New England and New York, pictured the Afro-American as incapable of self-government. Through him and other leading men, the cry of the South to the country has been, "Hands off! Leave us to solve our problems." To the Afro-American, the South says, "The white man must and will rule." There is little difference between the antebellum South and the New South. Her white citizens are wedded to any method, however revolting, any measure, however extreme, for the subjugation of the young manhood of the race. They have cheated him out of his ballot, deprived him of civil rights or redress thereof in the civil courts, robbed him of the fruits of his labor, and are still murdering, burning, and lynching him. The result is a growing disregard of human life. Lynch law has spread its insidious influence till men in New York State, Pennsylvania, and on the free Western plains can feel they make the take the law in their hands with impunity, especially where an Afro-American is concerned. The South is brutalized to a degree not realized by its own inhabitants, and the very foundation of government, law, and order are imperiled. Public sentiment has had a slight reaction, though not sufficient to stop crusade of lawlessness and lynching. The spirit of Christianity of the great M.E. Church was aroused to the frequent and revolting crimes against a weak people, enough to pass strong condemnatory resolutions at its General Conference in Omaha last May. The spirit of justice in the Grand Old Party asserted itself sufficiently to secure a denunciation of the wrongs and a feeble declaration of the belief in human rights in the Republican platform at Minneapolis on June the 7th. Some of the great dailies and weeklies have swung into line declaring that lynch law must go. The President of the United States issued a proclamation that it is not tolerated in the territories over which he has jurisdiction. Governor Northern and Chief Justice Bleckley of Georgia have proclaimed against it. The citizens of Chattanooga, Tennessee have set a worthy example in that they not only condemn lynch law, but other public men demanded a trial for Weems, the accused rapist, and guarded him while the trial was in progress. The trial only lasted 10 minutes, and Weems chose to plead guilty and accept 21-year sentence than invite the certain death which awaited him outside the cordon of police if he had told the truth and shown the letters he had from the white woman in the case. Colonel A.S. Collier of Nashville, Tennessee, is so overcome with the horrible state of affairs that he addressed the following earnest letter to the Nashville American. Nothing since I have been a reading man has so impressed me with the decay of manhood among the people of Tennessee as the dastardly submission of the mob reign. We have reached the unprecedented new level, the awful criminal depravity of substituting the mob up for the court and jury and giving up the jail keys to the mob whenever they are demanded. We do it in the largest cities and in the country towns. We do it in midday. We do it after full, not to say formal notice, and so thoroughly and generally is it acquiesced in that the murderers have discarded the formula of masks. They go into the town where everybody knows them, sometimes under the gaze of the governor, in the presence of the courts, in the presence of the sheriff and his deputies, in the presence of the entire police force. Take out the prisoner, take his life, often with fiendish glee and often with acts of cruelty and barbarism which impress the reader with a degeneracy rapidly approaching savage life. That the state is disgraced but faintly expresses the humiliation which has settled upon the office, or on the once proud people of Tennessee. The state in its majesty, through its organized life, for which the people pay liberally, makes but one record, but one note, and that a criminal falsehood was hung by persons of the jury unknown. The murder at Shelbyville is only a verification of what every intelligent man knew would come, because with a mob of rumor is as good as a proof. These efforts brought forth apologies and a short halt, but the lynching mania was raged again through the past 3 months with unabated fury. The strong arm of the law must be brought to bear upon lynchers in severe punishment, but this cannot and will not be done unless a healthy public sentiment demands and sustains such action. The men and women in the South who disapprove of lynching and remain silent on the perpetration of such outrages are perhaps criminals, accomplices, accessories before and after the fact, equally guilty with the actual lawbreakers who would not persist if they did not know that neither the law nor militia would be employed against them. Chapter 6, Self-Help. In the creation of the healthier public sentiment, the Afro-Americans can do for himself what no one else can do for him. The world looks on with wonder that we have conceded so much and remain law-abiding under the great outrage and provocation. To Northern capital and Afro-American labor in the South owes its rehabilitation. If labor is withdrawn, capital will not remain. The Afro-American is thus the backbone of the South. A thorough knowledge and judicious exercise of this power in lynching localities could many times effect a bloodless revolution. The white man's dollar is his god, and to stop this will be the outrages of too many localities. The Afro-Americans of Memphis denounced the lynching of 3 of their best citizens and urged and waited for the authorities to act in the matter to bring the lynchers to justice. No attempt was made to do so, and the black men left the city by thousands, bringing about great stagnation in every branch of business. Those who remained so injured the business of the streetcar company by staying off the cars that the superintendent, manager, and treasurer called personally on the editor of the Free Speech, asked them to urge our people to give them their patronage again. Other businessmen become alarmed over the situation with the free speech was run away that the colored people might be more easily controlled. The meeting of white citizens in June, 3 months after the lynching, passed resolutions for the first time condemning it. But they did not punish the lynchers. Every one of them was known by name because they had been selected to do the dirty work by some of the very citizens who passed these resolutions. Memphis is fast losing her black population, who proclaim as they go that there is no protection for the life and property of any Afro-American citizen in Memphis who is not a slave. The Afro-American citizens of Kentucky, whose intellectual and financial improvement has been phenomenal, have never had a separate car law until now. Delegations and petitions poured into the legislature against it, yet the bill passed and the Jim Crow car of Kentucky is a legalized institution. Will the great mass of Negroes continue to patronize the railroad? A special from Covington, Kentucky says, Covington, June 13th. The railroads of the state are beginning to feel very markedly the effects of the separate coach bill recently passed by the legislature. No class of people in the state have so many and so largely attended excursions as the blacks. All these have been abandoned and regular travel is reduced to a minimum. A competent authority says the loss to the various roads will reach $1 million this year. A call to the state conference in Lexington, Kentucky last June had delegates from every county in the state. These delegates, the ministers, teachers, heads of secret and others orders, and the head of every family should pass the word around for every member of the race in Kentucky to stay off railroads unless obliged to ride. If they did so and their advice was followed persistently, the convention would not need to petition the legislature to repeal the law or raise money to file a suit. The railroad corporations would be so affected they would be in self-defense lobby to have the separate car law repealed. On the other hand, as long as the railroads can get Afro-American excursions, they will always have plenty of money to fight all the suits brought against them. They will be aided in doing so by the same partisan public sentiment which passed the law. White men passed the law, and white judges and juries would pass upon the suits against the law and render judgment in line with their prejudices and in the deference to the greater financial power. The appeal to the white man's pocket has ever been more effectual than all the appeals ever made to his conscience. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is to be gained by further sacrifice of manhood and self-respect by the right exercise of his power as the industrial factor of the South. The Afro-American can demand and secure his rights, the punishment of lynchers, and a fair trial for accused rapists. Of the many inhuman outrages of this present year, the only case where the proposed lynching did not occur was where the men armed themselves in Jacksonville, Florida, and Paducah, Kentucky, and prevented it. The only times an Afro-American who was assaulted got away has been when he had a gun and used it in self-defense. The lesson this teaches, and which every Afro-American should ponder well, is that a Winchester rifle should have a place of honor in every black home, and it should be used for that protection which the law refuses to give. When the white man, who is always the aggressor, knows he runs the great risk of biting the dust every time his Afro-American victim does, he will have greater respect for Afro-American lives. The more the Afro-American yields and cringes and begs, the more he has to do so, the more he is insulted, outraged, and lynched. The assertion has been substantiated throughout these pages that the press contains unreliable and doctored reports of lynchings, and one of the most necessary things for the race to do is to get these facts before the public. The people must know before they can act, and there is no educator to compare with the press. The Afro-American papers are the only ones which will print the truth, and they lack means to employ agents and detectives to get at the facts. The race must rally a mighty host to the support of their journals and thus enable them to do much in the way of investigation. A lynching occurred in Port Jarvis, New York, the first week of June. A white and colored man were implicated in the assault upon a white girl. It was charged that the white man paid the colored boy to make the assault, which he did on the public highway in broad daytime, and was lynched. This, too, was done by parties unknown. The white man in the case still lives. He was imprisoned and promises to fight the case on trial. At the preliminary examination, it developed that he had been a suitor of the girl's. She had repulsed and refused him, yet had given him money and had sent threatening letters demanding more. And he had sent threatening letters demanding more. The day before his examination, she was so wrought up she left home and wandered miles away. When found, she said she did so because she was afraid of the man's testimony. Why should she be afraid of the prisoner? Why should she yield to the demands for money, if not to prevent him exposing something he knew? It seems explainable only on the hypothesis that a liaison existed between the colored boy and the girl, and the white man knew of it. The press is singularly silent. Has it a motive? We owe it to ourselves to find out. The story comes from Larned, Kansas, October 1st, that a young white lady held at bay until daylight without alarming anyone in the house, a burly Negro who entered her room and bed. The burly Negro was promptly lynched without investigation or examination of inconsistent stories. A house was found burned down near Montgomery, Alabama in Monroe County on October 13th, a few weeks ago. Also, the burned bodies of the owners and melted piles of gold and silver. These discoveries led to the conclusion that the awful crime was not prompted by motives of robbery. The suggestion of the whites was that brutal lust was the incentive, and as there are nearly 20 Negroes living within a radius of 5 miles of the place, the conclusion was inevitable that some of them were the perpetrators. Upon the suggestion probably made by the real criminal, the mob acted upon the conclusion and arrested 10 Afro-Americans, 4 of whom, they tell the world, confessed to the deed of murdering Richard L. Johnson and outraging his daughter, Jeanette. These 4 men, Beryl Jones, Moses Johnson, Jim and John Packer, none of them 25 years of age, upon this conclusion were taken from jail, hanged, shot, and burned while yet alive the night of October the 12th. The same report says Mr. Johnson was on the best of terms with his Negro tenants. The race, thus outraged, must find out the facts of this awful hurling of men into eternity on supposition, and give them the indifferent and apathetic, or give them to the indifferent and apathetic country. We feel this has to be a garbled report, but now can we prove it? Near Vicksburg, Mississippi, a murder was committed by a gang of burglars. Of course, it must have been done by Negroes, and Negroes were arrested for it. It is believed that 2 men, Smith Tooley and John Adams, belonged to a gang controlled by white men, and fearing exposure on the night of July 4th, they were hanged in the courthouse yard by those interested in silencing them. Robberies since committed in the same vicinity have been known to be by white men who had their faces blackened. We strongly believe in the innocence of these murdered men, but we have no proof. No other news goes out to the world save that which stamps us as a race of cutthroats, robbers, and lustful wild beasts. So great is Southern hate and prejudice, they legally hung poor little 13-year-old Mildred Brown at Columbia, South Carolina on October the 7th on the circumstantial evidence that she poisoned a white infant. In her guilt, if her guilt had been proven unmistakably, had she been white, Mildred Brown would have never been hung. The country would have been aroused and South Carolina disgraced forever for such a crime. The Afro-American himself did not know, as he should have known, as his journals should be in a position to have him know and act. Nothing is more definitively settled than he must act for himself. I have shown how he may employ the boycott, migration, and the press, and I feel that by a combination of all these agencies can be effectually stamped out lynch law and the last relic of barbarism and slavery. The gods help those who help themselves. But that ends the chapter. Let me look at footnotes. They talk about Henry W. Grady, who was nationally renowned journalist and orator, part owner and editor of the Atlanta Constitution. And then they have Benjamin Harrison, a Republican from Ohio. When they're, what are they referencing? President of the United States issued a proclamation that it not be tolerated in the territories over which he has jurisdiction. So yeah, that's a reference to Benjamin Harrison making that proclamation. But yeah, she points out the just stupid reasons that many of these lynchings happen, or the fact that many of them happen on pure lie, fabrication. And she calls out suggesting that maybe African American families should have a gun available. It would certainly make lynching less likely. It makes you wonder, how has all this been accepted? Slavery since 15, I'm not sure exact year that the Dutch brought them in as slaves, and then the English also started doing it when they tried to start taking in the new land, 1607. What new land? There was already people there, but for them it was new land. Then slavery ends 1865. And still, there is so much despicable, vile treatment toward people just trying to live their lives. It's ridiculous. And then we've seen a number of times how the evil one must be the black man who has relations with a white woman. It's like, how do you figure this? Because, of course, as we talked about earlier in the book, the myth of white womanhood, it must be protected. Oh, goodness. And she points out, if it had been a white man who had accused of most of these crimes, they would never have went through what most African Americans did. The Mildred Brown, where the girl they said that was accused of poisoning an infant and then killed, Wells specifically notes, if it had been a white girl, not much else would have been thought of it. Because again, this is a different age. Late 1800s. The way they saw life, because most children died so young. Things happen. Don't make it right, but yeah, it's part of the fact that it's from a different era. But yeah, next episode we'll be jumping into the red record for this book, which is another pamphlet or mini book she wrote. But with that, as always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and source. I have none to put in the description box. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.